Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for joining in for. We begin with, we'll offer prayers and then we'll start our discussion. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sapitam Ila Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamsha Namaom Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatai Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gautase Namah Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we're going to start with the second chapter for today. I'll just quickly read out the last verse of chapter 1. Chapter 1, text number 46. Sanjay Vacha. Evam Aktvarjunaha Sankhe Rathopastha Upavishat Visrajyasa Sharam Chapam Shoka Samvignamanasah. So just to remind you, this is a conversation going on between Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya. And what is one of the last things that Sanjaya said to Dhritarashtra? Sanjaya said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows, and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. So Sanjay is describing, we discussed that last time, what no enemy could do to Arjuna to give up his Gandiva, his mental turbulence, or his indecision, or his emotional instability, as per to say, has caused him to give up his Gandiva bow. And that is what is happening here right now. I want you to think for a second how excited Dhritarashtra would be. He was just waiting something like this to happen. In fact, he was a little fearful that this might happen to Duryodhana. Therefore, he asked Dharma Kshetra Kurukshetra. He was a little fearful that what response now Arjuna is giving, he was fearful that it should not be given by Duryodhana. But imagine now how excited Dhritarashtra would be when he would have heard from Sanjaya that Arjuna is grief-stricken He has collapsed on his chariot with eyes full of tears and Gandiva bow slipping. So that's the subject matter. What happened next is what we're going to discuss now. So let's take a look, start with our presentation quickly, and then we'll take our discussion from the verses. Let's begin with it. So today we thought of covering verse number 1 to verse number 20th of chapter 2, but because I don't have electricity here, so I don't know how long our laptop battery would run. We'll see. So before we move forward, just a quick look at some key lessons from the chapter 1, certain grouping by verses. Verse number 1, dangers of I and mind philosophy. So you both have access to slide? Oh no, have it? Okay, fine. So dangers of I and mind philosophy, the very first thing, Mahamaka Pandavas Chaiva, that was the whole discussion. The whole fight was just because of this whole I and mind philosophy, I and mind concept, where Dhritarashtra could not think anything beyond his own self-interest. And here Dhritarashtra can be compared with Ravana from this context. Just like Ravana had become so selfish while being even reprimanded or even suggested by even Kumbhakaran that, my dear brother, you have done a great mistake by abducting a wife of somebody else, and the somebody else is no one else. In fact, Lord Ram, you have done a great crime by doing this mistake. Yet Ravana never changed. Similarly, Dhritarashtra was advised again and again. In fact, here Supreme Personality of Godhead personally came. In the case of Ravana, the Lord's pure devotee with Vibhishan was there to advise. In case of Dhritarashtra, Vidura was there. But for Dhritarashtra, even Krishna personally came. So you can imagine how strongly he was attached to this concept of I and mind philosophy. And that's what led to the whole collapse. And therefore, one of the things that Prabhupada said is one of the concluding instructions, your love for me would be shown how you cooperate for me. When the subject matter or when the concept of cooperation comes, cooperation can only exist when the concerned parties are willing to sacrifice. If the spirit of sacrifice or one's interest is not there, we can never work in a cohesive spirit. And that's what happened with Dhritarashtra. What was he supposed to sacrifice? Only 5 villages? He could not sacrifice even 5 villages. And therefore, this whole collapse, of Vamsha happened because of that. Now imagine this was Dwapar Yuga. Now in Treta Yuga, Ravana was advised by Vibhishan. In Dwapar Yuga, Dhritarashtra was advised by Vidura, counterpart of Vibhishan. And additionally, the Supreme Personality of Godhead came and advised. And fast forward to Kali Yuga. I mean, all of you are smart enough to understand what would be our situation in Kali Yuga. Now think about it. Therefore, in Kali Yuga came Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he gave us the most simple and sublime process, that is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. So, Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So that was a point 1. Verse number 2 to verse number 12, we saw about how he was afraid. He expected the Pandavas would have an army, half the size of his army. Yet he was so scared. So we have made a point, Prabhupada actually makes a point, material security, or for that reason, prosperity, does not guarantee fearlessness. How many of us keep striving to improve our material prosperity and enhance our material security, thinking that is a way we can overcome fear? Yes or no? But that teaches something important here. Text number 30 to text number 20th. Pandavas, can we close the doors? Pandavas, even having literally half the size of the army, not having knockout batsmen just like Kaurvas had, yet because they were dependent on Krishna, Krishna was by their side, they were totally fearless. Although Pandavas had all the reason to be fearful, but they were fearless. And the point here was dependence on the Lord determines our fearlessness. The more we are dependent on the Lord. One definition of humility. What is humility, if somebody asks? One definition of humility is to have full surrender, full dependence on Krishna is the meaning of humility. Prabhupada writes in the first canto, one of the purports. Text number 21 to 27, we saw a very, very important lessons there also. where now Arjuna asked, "My dear Lord, Ubhayo Senayo Madhe, take my chariot in the middle of both the armies." And we were discussing why chapter 1 is titled, although in Sanskrit it is called Arjun Vishad Yoga, then why it is called as observing the army in English? Because it teaches something very important. The title of the chapter has a whole meaning of the why? Because the whole perplexity, the confusion, the bewilderment for Arjuna began with seeing with his eyes. So we don't see through our eyes. When we try to see through our eyes, we'll only be perplexed because we don't see through the eyes. We see through our perceptions. You see, but this is just an instrument. This instrument collects the information, and the information is processed by your thinking, feeling, willing, the function of the mind. And that is entirely, the processing of the information is entirely based on your perception. For example, if you happen to eat a gulab jamun, which was spoiled, which was tasteless, how many of you agree if you are served gulab jamun again, when your eyes would fall on the gulab jamun, immediately you will feel like, oh, this is not going to be good. Yes or no? So you see, but you don't see through your eyes. You see through your perceptions. So that was a very, very important lesson, observing the army. So Arjuna saw through his perception, therefore he got into bewildered state. So Bhagavad Gita changes that perception. Bhagavad Gita, the message of Bhagavad Gita changes our vision. So we don't see through our eyes, we see through our ears. And when Arjuna saw the same army through his ears, when he heard Krishna, the perception changed, and therefore whatever bewilderment he had wasn't there anymore. So that was 21, 27, like that. And then the fifth section, 28 to 30th, the lack of spiritual education leads to bewilderment, which means who am I, the bodily consciousness, where 28 to 30, he gives the excuse of compassion. Oh, I would be killing them, etc. So where we discussed about, lack of spiritual education. Means spiritual education, three foundation teachings of spirituality is who am I, who is Supreme Personality Godhead, and what is our relationship with Him. When we don't have answers to these three fundamental questions, which is called as Sambandha Gyan, then the person would often remain bewildered or perplexed. We'll speak more on perplexity today in second chapter. And the last section was 31 to 42, where he gave different reasons for not fighting the war, like compassion, enjoyment, fear of sinful reactions, destruction of family tradition, etc. It was all arising because of selfish interest. When we have our selfish interest, it often leads to spiritual blindness. And what could be a classical better example than Dhritarashtra or Duryodhana for that reason? They just could not see. Imagine Dhritarashtra heard the whole Bhagavad Gita. He heard about Virat Roop. He heard about how Arjuna was terrified seeing the Virat Roop. In Virat Roop's mouth, Arjuna saw the whole Kaurava's army entering. Yet he could not make the right decision. That's what I mean by selfish interest leads to spiritual blindness. And finally, the message of Bhagavad Gita prepares for the impending crisis, inevitable crisis. That's how the message of Bhagavad Gita is very, very important. I just thought of highlighting this because it's a very important chapter, which is often skipped, thinking that it's just a history. Well, that's not the case here. Fine, let's move forward. Oh, where is my presentation? Yeah. So these are the 5 reasons of Arjuna not to fight. We already discussed that. So let's come to the chapter 2 now. Where in this chapter 2, which is titled as Contents of Gita Summarize, largely if you read this carefully, you'll see all the principles which would be later on explained in details are highlighted or discussed already in chapter 2. Everything is discussed here. So what are the key messages, if I want to just put it into a summary format for all of you? What are the key subject matter of this chapter 2? There are three key subject matters of chapter 2. The first fundamental aspect of spiritual wisdom, who am I? I am not the body but the spirit soul, which Srila Prabhupada says is the first instruction in spiritual life. It must be imparted by a spiritual master. So fundamental aspect of spiritual wisdom. What is our foundation? Well, that is soul. What are the characteristics? And how to live with this understanding, which means the second point is, if we understand I'm not the body but the spirit soul, How do I live with this understanding? What are the practical application of this knowledge? How my tomorrow looks different than today? How does such a person who knows is not a body but spirit soul functions? That makes the third point. The symptoms of a person who has fully realized the spiritual wisdom: walk, talk, speak, and sit. This way, chapter 2 offers a concise overview of the entire philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, and not only Bhagavad Gita, in fact, of entire scriptures. Thus, it is titled as Contents of the Gita Summarized. And these acronyms are actually composed by his guest Sutapa Prabhu from London, Bhaktivedanta Manor. I'm just using his notes of acronym here for our producer here, who just last weekend, I believe, right? Who just last weekend received sannyas initiation from His Holiness. Just the name skipped from my head. Kadam Kana Swami Maharaj. Yes. His Holiness Kadam Kana Swami Maharaj. He just received sannyas initiation. So his guest Sutta Prabhu has beautifully written this acronyms for every chapter. So we're going to use that. So the acronym for this chapter is Gita. That way it can be divided into 4 sections. G for Guru, the first 10 verses. Then identity, who am I, which is largely the part of Sankhya Yoga, 11 to 30th verse. And 2 dharmas, 31 to 53, Swadharma, Nitya Dharma, and finally Atmaram. So let's begin with Guru. So first 10 verses will talk about this. So we'll now take a look from the book actually. This was just a quick overview. So let's begin with chapter 2, verse number 1. And for first 10 verses, we'll see how the whole subject matter is all about. Arjuna is compelled, or rather impelled, to surrender. And some devotees have got unmuted, so I'll just mute them. Okay? So those who are co-hosts, our devotees, you can manage muting, unmuting. Okay? I have unmuted everyone. Okay. All right. So chapter 2, text number 1, Sanjaya Vacha. So what happened? Dhritarashtra is eagerly waiting. You can understand how excited would he be to know Arjuna have kept his bow, Gandiva bow. He's crying. Did he walk to the forest or not? What happened, Sanjaya? Please tell me. And that's how the first verse comes, where Sanjaya says, Tam tatha kripaya vishtam ashrupurna kulekshanam vishidantam idam vakyam Vacha Madhusudana. Dhritarashtra is very excited, and now Sanjaya says, Tam tatha kripaya vishtam, kripaya, out of his compassion, Ashrupurna kulikshanam, out of his compassion, his eyes had become filled with tears. Vishidantam idam vakyam, and Arjuna was lamenting for his situation. At that point of time, Vacha Madhusudana, at that point of time, Krishna spoke. Well, when Krishna spoke, why Sanjaya has to use the name Madhusudana? I love this part of Bhagavad Gita, which makes this conversation so lively, because very thoughtfully every single word is being chosen. And Prabhupada in the very second, third line says, why Sanjaya is calling Madhusudana? Just to remind Dhritarashtra, please understand, who is standing on the chariot of Arjuna? Not Krishna, not Gwala. Madhusudana, the one, there were 2 demons back in Satya Yuga, Madhu and Kaitava, who had stolen Vedas from Brahma, which means stealing the intelligence of Brahma. Just like the doubts has stolen the intelligence of Arjuna, and he has become bewildered. And then Krishna appeared and killed Madhu and Kaitava doubts, and recovered the Vedas and gave it back to Brahma. So, hey Dhritarashtra, point in the purport about compassion. What compassion are we talking about? Prabhupada raises a point. Prabhupada gives an example, analogy, just like a man drowning into the river. Now, what is more important, to save the body or save the clothes? If somebody tries or makes an attempt to save the cloth, but not the body, what is the use of it? Similarly, the compassion that we generally talk about is taking care of the body, but not of the spirit. You getting the point? The body is compared to the dress, and the soul is compared to the person within the dress. So that compassion is of no use. Prabhupada writes in the middle of the purport, the first paragraph, no one knows where compassion should be applied. Compassion for the dress of a drowning man is senseless. A man fallen in the ocean on his signs cannot be saved simply by rescuing his outward dress, the gross material body. Like that. And then we go to text number 2. Now, Krishna begins to speak when Arjuna have really become disheartened. So Sanjay describes now Krishna speaks. What does Krishna say? Can we have the verses on the screen? Text number 2. Shri Bhagwan Vacha Kutastva Kashmalam Idam Vishame Samupashtitam Anarya Jushtam Asvargyam Akirti Karamarjuna. There are many elements to look into this verse. When it was Arjuna, Sanjay said, or let's say Vyasivji said, because Vyasivji is compiling, Arjuna Vacha. And you just saw the previous verse. Look at the previous verse again, second chapter, verse number, or text number 1. What do you see on the very first line? Sanjay Vacha. Go to chapter number 1, text 1. What do you see? Dhritarashtra Vacha. So when it comes to Madhusudana Vacha,
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Okay, I think Prabhu got logged out. He'll be logging in again.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, ये रुकावट के लिए खेद है. दूरदर्शन का कार्यक्रम जारी रहेगा. So what to do? We don't have electricity, so limited internet. So one internet is gone. We're connected with another hotspot. Let's see how long it functions. Okay. So Sri Bhagwan Vacha. So here Srila Vyasadeva, the point I was making was, since the time Srila Vyasadeva composed all the Vedic scriptures, among all hundreds and thousands of Vedic texts, one text which have not changed even by a word is Bhagavad Gita. And of course, second is Srimad Bhagavatam also. And there are a few other handful of texts which have not changed over the 5,000 years. The point is, Shri Bhagavan Vacha, it has not been added by Srila Prabhupada. It is not that ISKCON people say Krishna is Bhagavan. Often there are so many people outside, they have made a YouTube videos. In fact, they say, where does Krishna say he's Bhagavan? I mean, forget about Krishna. The Vyasdev ji is saying he's Bhagavan. Why do you debate about this? So this is not something which is added by any devotees. It's there from beginning like that. Okay. So that's the first point. We'll discuss about. Prabhupada and the purport highlights this. How Krishna is the Bhagavan. We'll take a look into it. There are few other elements. Can we have the screen sharing here? There are few other elements. Other element is Kashmalam. Dirtiness is very interesting. Sanjaya, you see the word Kashmalam? The Kashmalam means dirtiness, weakness. Very interestingly, if you go on to the first verse, Sanjaya says, Sanjaya calls Arjuna's situation as Krapaya Vishtam. He was overwhelmed by compassion. And Krishna calls Arjuna's compassion as dirtiness. Yes or no? How would you explain this? We can take off the screen off now. That's okay. Anyone would like to explain? Sanjaya called Arjuna's situation is out of compassion. And Krishna, the very first thing Krishna says is, Kutas, from where? From where? Krishna is surprised. Twa, you, Kashmalam, from where have this dirtiness come into you? Vishame, at this time of crisis, Samupasthitam arrived, an Arya. So here Arjuna is said to belonging to an Aryan class, Aryan civilization. And Krishna says, you belong to an Aryan civilization, but you are acting like an Arya. Aswargyam. And your behavior which you are doing now does not lead to higher destination. Akirti karam. And Arjuna, this action of yours will only bring infamy to you, to your whole family. So one word answer is there. Why Krishna said not act of compassion, which for so many human rights activists, so-called human rights activists, would extol, would glorify Arjuna's stand to not get into a violence. But Krishna calls that kushmalam, dirtiness. This is ridiculous. Arjuna, what are you doing? What's the answer? Why Krishna is saying it like that? We have discussed that in the past. Okay, Nitai Prabhu, go ahead.
Yeah, Prabhu, because that's understanding is on the bodily platform. That compassion is on the bodily platform.
Okay. Little more. Okay, fine, correct. But there is a very specific thing which I have highlighted before also. We don't want to miss out that. Bodily consciousness, correct. What's next thing? Chintamani Mataji, unmute.
It is that he is trying to give up his duty.
Yes, thank you. That's the point. That's the reason. And of course, that's all happening from bodily consciousness. Even if we are in bodily consciousness, let's talk about sadhakas. Even if you're in bodily consciousness, if we are perturbed, whatever, whatnot, but we are still not supposed to give up our dharma, which is duty. So being in a bodily consciousness is not so terrifying here. But the point is, he's not performing his duty is what we criticize largely. And I made this point before also, when we are talking about compassion, Krishna, Prabhupada says, being a pure devotee, he is compassionate. And the next verse, Prabhupada criticizes his compassion. The same point here. Similarly, Krishna is calling it as Kashmalam. Now, let's take a look at the definition of Bhagwan, and then we'll go back to Anarya and Akirtikaram. Now, Bhagwan Uvacha, if you look at the purport, Prabhupada gives at least 3 to 4 evidences of Krishna being Supreme Personality Godhead. The very first point Prabhupada makes, the Supreme Personality Godhead, the conception of the Supreme Lord exists in 3 levels. Vadandi tat vavidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti pramatmeti bhagvaniti shabdyate. And Prabhupada gives a very beautiful example to explain that. Would anyone like to read the next paragraph? Paragraph next to the verse. Mother Leela Nandani, I saw your hand going up.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, these 3 divine aspects can be explained by the example of the sun, which also has 3 different aspects, namely the sunshine, the sun's surface, and the sun planet itself. One who studies the sunshine only is the preliminary student. One who understands the sun's surface is further advanced. And one who can enter into the sun planet is the highest. Ordinary students who are satisfied by simply understanding the sunshine, its universal pervasiveness, and the glaring effulgence of its impersonal nature may be compared to those who can realize only the Brahman feature of the Absolute Truth. The student who has advanced still further can know the sun disk, which is compared to knowledge of the Paramatma feature of the Absolute Truth. And the student who can enter into the heart of the sun planet is compared to those who realize the personal features of the Supreme Absolute Truth. Therefore, the Bhaktas or the Transcendentalists who have realized the Brahman feature of the Absolute Truth are the topmost Transcendentalists. Although all students who are engaged in the study of the Absolute Truth are engaged in the same subject matter, the sunshine, the sun disk, and the inner affairs of the sun planet cannot be separated from one another, and yet the students of the three different phases are not in the same category. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yes, 1 second, just 1 second. Yeah. So that's the thing Prabhupada explains about the three aspects in which the Supreme Lord exists. And then in this next paragraph, Prabhupada talks about what is the meaning of the word Bhagavan. And Bhagavad Gita, when we'll read it, we'll see this point again and again. Bhagavan, many times people will ask you, what does the word Bhagavan means? And the simple definition is cause of all causes. Mataha paratram nanyat kinchidasti Dhananjaya. There is no other cause than I am the cause of all. 7th chapter, 7th verse of Bhagavad Gita. And then in the next paragraph, Prabhupada quotes the verse by Parasar Muni. So let's go to this presentation and I'll show you from there what is being discussed on the subject matter. So, Hare Krishna. Yes. So, Parasar Muni in Vishnu Puran describes the definition of Bhagavan. I believe some of you, most of you might be familiar with this verse. Aishwarasya samagrasya virayasya yashasha shriya jnana vairagayaschaiva shanna bhagatangana. The six opulences, Aishwarya, virayasya, yash, shriya, beauty, jnana, knowledge, and vairagya, renunciation. One who has incomplete, all the six opulences is said to be Bhagavan. That is a point Prabhupada makes in the follow-up paragraph. And then Prabhupada goes, Brahmaji. We know the concept of Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. And then Prabhupada goes, Brahmaji, and Brahma Samhita says, Ishwaraha Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. And this is what Prabhupada quotes, and then for Prabhupada quotes Srimad Bhagavatam, where Prabhupada says in Srimad Bhagavatam it is concluded Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When Sutta Goswami describes different incarnations of the Lord, there, after concluding the description of all incarnations, Sutta Goswami says, Ete cham sakalha pumsa. Ete means all these. Cha amshaha. These all are the plenary portions, chamsa kalha pumsa, or the portion of the portions, of whom ete chamsa kalha pumsa krishnastu bhagavan. So they all are plenary portions of the plenary portions of Krishna. And who is Krishna? He is a Bhagavan. Like that, Prabhupada gives the evidences. Therefore, Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is how largely this purport goes. And I would say it is very nice if in case somebody asks you, prove Krishna is Bhagavan, these are a few points that we can memorize. Our duty is to memorize what Prabhupada have written to us, and we just repeat it. So this is something which we can just share with others for that reason. Now, next thing is on this verse is Anarya. Prabhupada talks about Arya in the very last paragraph. So, to us, it is taught, thanks to the party which had ruled post-British era for larger part of our independence. They established the ideology which British taught us, that they are the superior race. Actually, they are the Aryans, and they migrated to Bharat 3,500 years ago. So there is an invasion theory. There is a theory called as Aryan invasion theory. How many of you here are aware of this Aryan invasion theory? Can you please raise your hands? So to that, can we have your digital hand? Because of little poor internet here, I'm not able to see every one of you. If you can just share the vertical hand, what is a digital hand or whatever. Okay, most of you are aware of it. So I'll not go into that Aryan vision theory, but in 2 or 3 lines, Aryan vision theory Prabhupada mentions briefly here. According to the Britishers, when they came, they taught us that their ancestors were the true Aryans, Europeans were the true Aryans, and they migrated 3,500 years ago to India, where at that point of time, a large part of population was living in North India. So when these British settlers came to North India, and the people living in North India at that point of time were completely uncivilized, uncultured, uneducated, and whatnot. So they brought in education, culture, civilization to them, and therefore to teach them, they wrote. The Britishers wrote, Europeans wrote Vedic scriptures. And then there was some conflict that happened, and they divided the society in Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. So all these people became Shudras, Malecha, Yavanas, and they pushed them, which means the British settlers pushed them because of conflict. The existing people moved to the South India. And this Aryan vision theory since then created a divide between North and South India. The South Indian became Dravidians, which were pushed by the British settlers who were Aryans. And another claim for that is, see, the North Indians have fair complexion, which means it's coming from the European hereditary. And the South Indians have the dark complexion, they were the actual residents here, uncivilized, uncultured people, etc., etc. That is what been fed. They were the one. And then they said, we have come back here because you people have forgotten the civilization culture again. So we are coming back here. We have come back here again to make you educated, civilized. And therefore you should accept our British school of education. You should accept Christianity as a faith, etc., etc. They taught it. That's what they did all that. That's Aryan vision theory. However, there is this whole Aryan invasion theory is filled with hundreds of glitches. I'll just make one point and we'll go next. Vedic scriptures speak at length about Saraswati River, isn't it? 3,500 years ago, the British settlers came, the Europeans came, and they created this Vedic scriptures and Vedic culture. If that's the case, if it isn't written by them, because large educational circle believes that it was the Europeans who came here, they are the most superior race, and we were uncivilized and uncultured. If that was the case, why would those people who came and settled here, which means the Europeans settled here, why would they talk about a river which dried up 4,000 years ago? Now, drying up of Saraswati River is a scientific fact. 4,000 years ago, this was not some Pandit speaking. This is a scholar speaking through their scientific research. Something which dried up 500 years ago, before they came in. Come on, 5 years we forget. किसी का कोई घर का सदस्य भी मर जाता है. If some relatives die or beloved dies, within the next 5 weeks, 5 months to 5 years, everyone forgets that person. You're talking about Saraswati River, which dried up 500 years ago. Why would they choose to write about that river? First of all, they did not knew about that land. They did not knew about what was there. Why would they choose to write about the river, call it as a divine river, which does not exist? Just one point. Anyways, let's go to text number 3. And Krishna uses a little soft word, sarcastically, but little chastises Arjuna. And he says, Klebhyam asamagama partha naitatvi upapadyate shudram hritya dharvalyam Tyakto tishta parantapa. Klebyam. From where did this impotency? Why Krishna is calling him as impotence? Because Krishna is indicating what all is happening is not because of compassion, it's just because of fearfulness. From where? Oh, Partha. Partha means, by Prabhupada writes, why Krishna is calling him as Partha? To indicate he's a son of Pratha. And who is Pratha? Pratha is Kunti. Kunti is a maternal aunt of Krishna, which means she belongs to a Kshatriya class. In other words, Arjuna, you belong to such a high class, and you are talking like this. I have compassion. You are crying like a child here. Naitatvai upapatyate. It does not befit you. Shudram hridya dharvalyam. This is nothing but your weakness of heart. Therefore, I say, tyaktva, chhod do, utishtha, utho, parantapa, destroyer of enemy. What a beautiful line. Therefore I call Krishna as the best motivational speaker. Can you see what a beautiful line he says? Tyaktva, give up, utishtha, uth jao. And then to encourage him, parantapa, you're a destroyer of enemies. And well, that's a fact. Why Krishna is so surprised? Of course, Krishna is not surprised, but here to look into the context. Why Krishna is sounding like he's amused and surprised at Arjuna's behavior? Because some time ago, Arjuna spoke the similar statement to the son of Virat when Arjuna was Brahmala. When the Kauravas had attacked the land of the Virat, and the son of Virat, the Virat had gone to fight on one side, and Yudhishthira was there, Bhim was there, Nakul, Sahadeva, all were there, and the Kauravas had planned to open two fronts. And the neighboring state had attacked, and the Kauravas thought will attack from the other side, and then Pandavas would have to come and rescue. There's no way Virat can defend themselves. So then when the remaining soldiers and people got to know in the kingdom of Virat that another front had been opened. But now the father is fighting somewhere else. The son was there in the palace only with the ladies. And the ladies began to glorify, some were girlfriends, some maybe at the level of mother, whatnot. They began to glorify the son. You are the most powerful, this and that. We know you'll be victorious. You will bring the crown of Bhishma, you'll bring the Gandiva, or you'll bring the bow of Karna, you'll bring the belt of Duryodhan, you'll bring the vastra of Ashwathama, you'll bring the lungi of Drodacharya. They went on. Mahabharata talks about it. When you read the Mahabharata talks about in detail how they went on glorifying it. The boy, yes. And yes, Hava mein udta udta wo chariot mein baith gaya. While flying in the sky, he sat on the chariot. Now, who would drive the chariot? Draupadi was there. And Draupadi knew this fellow is going to he's going to get butchered. What's going to happen? So, long story short, she arranged and convinced the son to have Brahmanala as a charioteer. And when Draupadi actually proposed Brahmanala, the boy who's been now pumped up, highly pumped up, he said, "Oh, how can a eunuch be my charioteer?" So, Arjuna, the Draupadi had to tell her, no. Draupadi was also in disguise. She was actually an assistant to the queen. She said, no. He was a charioteer for Arjuna. Yudhishthira Bhim is a very powerful expert charioteer. And then he agreed. And when they went into the war, and he's still pumping his chest, Brahmanala, you see the strength of my arms. I'll do this, I'll do that. And when he went on the battlefield, he saw nothing but the dust storm. The huge army is coming and there is a huge storm. And the boy asked, "Is there a change in the weather? Brahmanala, do you know any weather forecast for today?" Why suddenly, which was an empty field, now why there is such a big dust cloud here? And then when the army came nearby, and the boy saw, effulgent, huge personality like Bhima, Bhishma, Pitamaha, Karna, Duryodhan, Ashwathama, and whatnot. He literally, dhoti gilli ho jana. I don't know how to put it in English. He literally passed water on his lungi. So he was like, he jumped off and he began to run back to the kingdom. And that's the time Brahmanala jumped from the chariot, ran, caught hold of him, lifted him in his hands, his hand, what do you want to call the Brahmanala, and like a baby, have you seen a small child doesn't want to do what you're asking, and he's running away from you. You catch hold of the child and you put the child in your arms. Then the child throws the legs and hands everywhere. Like that, the prince was throwing up his arms. No, I will die. And that's the time Brahmanala said, "What happened to you? You're the son of a Kshatriya. It does not behoove you. Running away from the battle, you will accrue infamy. Getting killed in the battle, you will receive glory." So now you see the change of scene. Of course, Arjuna is not acting that much, but you understand why Krishna is in that sense. Krishna is saying, what's happening here? That's the whole thing which is happening here. Oh, chastiser of enemy. That's what Krishna speaks here. And let's go to text number 4. Arjuna Vacha. Now, how many of you agree? Again, let's see in the context of a counseling session. Because here Krishna is counseling, that's what's going to happen. And while concluding last time session, I made some point about, how to counsel. The very first thing about counseling is we should hear the other person thoroughly. Until the other person is exhausted, you cannot really help that person. So here what happened, Arjuna stopped speaking, therefore Krishna spoke. So how many of you have an experience when, let's say, you are the one who is going through who are going through some troubles. And when you are counseled or you are told by a senior, Prabhu or Mataji, this is not right. You should not do like this. How many of you agree? We immediately go on to excuses. We immediately take a recourse of excuses saying, no, it's not like this. You don't understand this. This is because this is because that. And we see that's what Arjuna is doing here. Now, Arjuna is doing that. Now the next part of the equation is, what a counselor is supposed to do after that. That we'll see in few verses. You getting a point? Arjuna is going to make excuses. What is counselor is supposed to do that? That's the next stage. We'll see that. This goes through sequentially, okay? And I would thoroughly justify my statement that I've just made, okay? Which I'm going to make in a short while. What is the next step for a counselor? When a counselee, or let's say for a guru, when a disciple goes on making excuses, what is the next step? And the next step may look a little bit upsetting to some of you, but I'll justify it wholeheartedly, okay? So let's see how this whole counseling session goes on, okay? So now Arjuna justifies, how can I be blamed, Krishna, after all? He says, look what beautiful thing Arjuna says. Arjuna vacha, katham bhishmam aham sankhe dronam cha madhusudana ishubi pratiyosyami pujara varisudana. Prabhu, Krishna, my dear friend, it is so easy for you to speak like this, that I am becoming unimportant. But you are Madhusudan, the one who killed the demons, Madhu and Kadaba. You are Arisudan, who is the destroyer of enemies. And you are asking me to kill Dronacharya and Bhishma? You did not kill your Sandipani Muni. You did not kill your relative. But you are asking, you are enemy of your, you are the killer of the enemies. Bhishma, Drona are my forefather, grandfather and teacher. How can you say like this? So he justifies his position. That's what happened in text number 4. How can I counteract with arrows in battle, man, like Bhishma and Drona? And then text number 5. He continues his justification now. What he says? Gurun mahatva hi mahanubhavan Shreyo bhoktam rakshayam apiha loke Hatva takama sugurun iheva Bhunjiya bhoga rutira pradiktan. It would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of lives of great souls who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with blood. Because Krishna called him Klebhyam. Why? Because he's not agreeing to fight with Bhishma and Drona. What to do? Bhishma and Drona are the other side. So Arjuna says, if I kill them, I'll be tainted with blood. I know they are fighting for the sake of wealth, but yet they are my superiors. So Krishna, you cannot call me like this. I am right. I should not do like this. Text number 6. Nachaitat vitmakataran nugariyo vadva jahima yadiva najayo yane vahatva najiji vishams te avastitha pramukhe dattarashtraha. Nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. If we kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, we should not care to live. Yet they are now standing before us on the battlefield. How many of you have an experience when you are in the perplexity and somebody tells you, senior tells you, no Prabhu, this is wrong, this is not, you have to change your behavior. And when we go to the justification, the moment we take to the justification, how many of you have experienced, you become more and more confused. It's just like getting caught in the web, which is very impossible for one to come out. And we blabber. After a while, we just blabber. We don't know what we are speaking. Something like that is happening here. If you see, Arjuna is literally blabbering. Better to be than tainted with the blood. I know they are after money, but what to do? They are my superior. And then in 6th verse he said, I don't know what is right, what is not right. If we kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, we should not care to live. When did Arjuna, in the 13th year of history, ever made a statement like this? Can you see what the Arjuna is saying? This is how he's becoming more and more bewildered. And it's just like you're losing your sanity now. What kind of thing? He's saying, if the sons of Dhritarashtra are killed, we will not care to live. This is same Arjuna who went to the heavens to acquire all the celestial weapons, to prepare for the scene. If that was the case, then why did he fought with the Kauravas as Brahmanala? Why did he fought? He could have walked away that time also. He defeated them so badly, all of them were injured. They had to run away for their life. How can he say? So you see that he's losing control of his mind, and it's just literally happening like, something of blabbering like that. Yet they are now standing before us on the battlefield. So this 4th verse to the 6th verse gives the 5th reason for Arjuna not to fight, particularly the 6th verse, that is indecisiveness. Where Arjuna says, I don't know what to do. Should I fight or not fight? I am not sure about it. So what did Arjuna do? Now this is something, until now, our situation is same. When we make a mistake, we seek a guidance. Our guide says, Prabhu, you made a mistake. We justify. And justify. And justify. And justify. And continue justifying. Right? And that's how it ends. And finally, Senior says, अरे बोल तू मेरा टाइम बर्बाद कर रहा है, तू जा यार. सुनने को तैयार नहीं है. But see what Arjuna did, which is very, very difficult for us to do. What Arjuna did, text number 7. Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava prachhami tvam dharma samudachetaha yashrehasyanishchitam bruhitan me shishyasteham sadimam tvam prapannam. Please pay attention to the very first time, the very first 2 words. Arjuna says, Karpanya dosho pahata sabhava. Where Arjuna agrees to what? What Krishna said. Text number 3. Shudram hirdya daurbalyam. Right? What Krishna said? Problem with you is weakness of heart. Text number 7. What Arjuna says? Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava. I mean, this is incredible. When he has almost given up hope on everything, suddenly he agrees, he understands that what Krishna is saying, Hridaya Daurbalyam, that is my problem. Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava. And then he says, Prachhami tvam. Prachhami, I ask you. Prachhami tvam. Dharma samuhuda chetaha. My cheta, my intelligence got completely bewildered. Prachhami tvam, I ask you dharma. What dharma? Yashrehasya nishchitam bruhitan me. Please tell me the dharma. Yashreya, which is the most beneficial for me. Yashrehasya nishchitam bruhitan me. Please tell me. So Krishna may ask, why should I tell you? तेरे को बोला ना अभी तू justify कर रहा था. I just told you, you're justifying. So Arjuna says, Shishyasteyam sadimam tvam prapannam. You're no more my friend now. You are my guru. I accept you as my spiritual master. Therefore, please guide me. And like that, Arjuna, for me, frankly speaking, it's a mystery. That how Arjuna, just in a span of a second, where he has said nothing doing, and he agrees whatever you are saying is correct. What Krishna told him, Hridaya Daurbalyam, he acknowledges it. How quickly he undergoes a self-introspection and realizes that it was his mistake. And he understands that I cannot fix my problem if I continue like this. I need to accept a spiritual master. So, but that's the beauty over here which is happening. A very, very beautiful puppet. Very beautiful puppet. Let's take a look at the puppet. Prabhupada glorifies material nature, which means sarcastically. What glorification? The material nature is nothing but always filled with perplexity. So somebody would like to read the first paragraph entirely? Please read out. The puppet of text 7. Anshul Prabhu, I believe I saw your hand. Yes, Anshul Prabhu, go ahead. Read out.
Yes, Hare Krishna. By nature's own way, the complete system of material activities is a source of perplexity for everyone. In every step, there is perplexity, and therefore it behooves one to approach a bona fide spiritual master who can give one proper guidance for executing the purpose of life. All Vedic literatures advise us to approach a bona fide spiritual master to get free from the perplexities of life, which happen without our desire. They are like a forest fire that somehow blazes without being set by anyone. Similarly, the world situation is such that perplexities of life automatically appear without our wanting such confusion. No one wants fire, and yet it takes place, and we become perplexed. The Vedic wisdom therefore advises that in order to solve the perplexities of life and to understand the science of the solution, one must approach a spiritual master who is in the disciplic succession. A person with a bona fide spiritual master is supposed to know everything. One should not, therefore, remain in the material perplexities, but should approach a spiritual master. This is the purport of this verse.
Hare Krishna. Very, very beautiful point Prabhupada makes here. I'll just read out the first line once again. By nature's own way, the complete system of material activities is a source of perplexity for everyone. Please mark this line, chapter 2, verse number 7. Let's fast forward Canto 1, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter number 19. There, I don't exactly remember the purport now. Yesterday only in the evening? No, yesterday morning I was speaking on this subject. There, Prabhupada in one of the purports in the 19th chapter writes, the nature of the material world or the condition is so bewildering. Even the pure devotee like Parishit Maharaj ends up committing offense, ends up committing mistake. If a pure devotee like Parishit Maharaj cannot be protected, rescued, then what to speak of everyone else? Now Arjuna, Prabhupada says, anyone is put into material perplexity, what he needs? Spiritual master. What did Parishit Maharaj do when he was put into that perplexity, an awkward situation? He took shelter of Sukadeva Goswami. Is that making sense? So if you see, there's a constant theme all across the lines of the lives of the great devotees. There is no alternative solution. The solution that we think that Duryodhan thought, generally that's what our approach of life is. Material prosperity and security is what going to give me security. No, that's not the way. It only creates more perplexities. So that's the first point here. Now, second point is in the second paragraph. So who would like to read the second paragraph? Please go ahead. Raise your hands. Nihar Prabhu, go ahead. The second paragraph. What is the purpose of human form of life is what has been discussed. Please go ahead, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Who is the man in material perplexities? It is he who does not understand the problems of life. In Brahad Anyaka Upanishad 3.8.10, the perplexed man is described as follows.
We can skip the Sanskrit, we can go to the English. What is that? Let's read in the English.
He is a miserly man who does not solve the problems of life as a human, and who thus quits this world like the cats and dogs, without understanding the science of self-realization. This human form of life is the most valuable asset for the living entity, who can utilize it from solving the problems of life. Therefore, one who does not utilize this opportunity properly is a miser. On the other hand, there is a Brahmana, or he who is intelligent enough to utilize this body to solve all the problems of life.
Hare Krishna. Looks like this internet is also gone. Hare Krishna. Is it internet issue at my end or something else happens? Okay,
No, we
I
can hear
can
you,
see
Prabhu.
them. So no, internet is working. Our internet is okay. Okay, sorry, huh? Because of the material situation, I'm becoming fearful right now. I thought we lost the internet. Okay, so Neha, you could read the whole thing. I lost your sound. Unmute. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure, Prabhu.
You read the whole thing?
Yes, Prabhu. Unless you want me to read
Okay,
more.
okay. Oh, fine, fine. Because in the end, I lost my little internet, so I couldn't hear you properly. Fine. So that's the point here. Miserly is being talked about, a miserly man who does not solve the problems of life as a human, who quits. And then in the follow-up paragraph, I'll give you the summary of it. In the follow-up paragraph, Popat writes, "Who is a kripana? Karpanya dosho. Kripana, karpanya, miserly. Who is a miserly person? Is an important thing. Dr. Anjana, Mother Anjana, please go ahead, read out the next paragraph. Please start.
The kripanas or miserly persons waste their time in being overly affectionate for family, society, country, etc. in the material conception of life. One is often attached to family life, namely to wife, children, and other members, on the basis of sick and disease. The kripana thinks he is able to protect his family members from death, or the kripana thinks that his family or society can save him from the verge of death. Such family attachment can be found even in the lower animals who take care of children also. Being intelligent, Arjuna could understand that his affection for family members and his wish to protect them from death were the cause of his perplexities. Although he could understand that his duty to fight was awaiting him still on account of miserly weaknesses, he could not discharge the duties.
Hare Krishna.
He is
That's
therefore
it.
also he is therefore asking Lord Krishna.
Yes, mother, this is. So, on account of his miserly weakness, therefore he could not discharge his duty. Is that clear? And we made this point before also. Why is being called as miserly like that? So, discussion continues. Text number 8. What happens? Arjuna expresses his weakness of heart further. Nahi prapashyami mamapanutya yachokam uchoshanam indriyanam avapya bhumavaspatnam ratham rajyam surana apichadipatyam. Translation. I can find no means to drive away this grief, which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty, like the demigods in heaven. A very beautiful purport here. If you want, you can write down the lesson which Prabhupada derives from this purport, or even if you want to write down the heading for this, the emphasis that Prabhupada gives in this purport is material knowledge is insufficient in solving the problems of life. Sanatan Rishi Prabhu. Please read the paragraph.
Although Arjuna was putting forward so many arguments based on knowledge of the principles of religion and moral codes, it appears that he was unable to solve his real problem without the help of the spiritual master, Lord Krishna. He could understand that his so-called knowledge was useless in driving away his problems, which were drying up his whole existence. And it was impossible for him to solve such perplexities without the help of a spiritual master like Lord Krishna. Academic knowledge, scholarship, high position, etc. are all useless in solving the problems of life. Help can be given only by a spiritual master like Krishna. Therefore, the conclusion is that a spiritual master who is 100% Krishna conscious is a bona fide spiritual master, for he can solve the problems of life. Lord Chaitanya said that one who is a master in the science of Krishna consciousness, regardless of his social position, is the real spiritual master.
So if we go two paragraphs below, the problems of material existence, Prabhupada writes, birth, old age, disease, and death, cannot be counteracted by accumulation of wealth and economic development. So that's the whole point. And the last paragraph, Prabhupada says, Krishna consciousness is the only way. And we should learn from Arjuna how he took shelter of his spiritual master and made a very serious inquiries, meaningful inquiries. Similarly, we should approach our spiritual master, make a serious inquiry, and get some guidance on our life, because life's problem cannot be solved. And the last paragraph of this purport, therefore, if we want to curb lamentation for good, then we have to take shelter of Krishna, as Arjuna is seeking to do. So Arjuna asks Krishna to solve his problem definitely. And that is the way of Krishna consciousness. Samsara dava nalalida loka tranaya karuna ganaganatam. That's the first prayer we offer to Guru every morning. Free us from this forest of material existence which is burning up. And the spiritual master appear as a rain cloud, showers the rain of mercy, and extinguishes the flames of forest fire. That's the point here. Text number 10. No, not 10. We finished 8, right? Text number 9. We're about to conclude our first section. Text number 9. Sanjay Vacha Evam Yuktva Rishikesham Gudakesha Parantaba Nayosya Iti Govindam Uktva Tushnim Babuaha. Sanjay said, having spoken thus, Arjuna, chastiser of enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. So although he kind of accepted the shelter, but it's not that we change our perception so easily. He said, Shishya Syam Sadimantam Prapannam. I am your disciple. And he only drawing the conclusion. So Guruji, Hari Bol, to mithai khao, khush raho. He only surrendered. He only said, I accept you as a Guru. And he only saying, the solution to my problem is, I will not fight. Hari Bol. So anyways, but understand, when a person is in lamentation, it's very difficult for a person to come out of the situation. Let's take one very small example. Imagine a conflict between husband and wife. The conflict have arisen to such an extent where husband and wife wants to divorce from each other. They cannot live with each other. Now in that situation, person comes to you, tells you, I cannot. Now when the person tells you, I cannot live with that person, the person has a whole history. How the other person troubled him or her, tortured, etc., whatnot. And then he's already made up a mind. Now somebody coming to a situation like this, where, see, how many people would come and discuss their family problems like that? Unless it has gone to an extreme degree. You're getting a point. Please understand Arjuna's situation. Something which has gone to an extreme degree. Often we try to reconcile at our end. Okay, tolerate kar lete hain, manage it, this and that, right? It manages. Now, if that was a simple situation for Arjuna, he could have just managed by himself. Now, when it is unmanageable, when you call it unmanageable, generally when you call it unmanageable, the immediate response is, I quit. Is it all making sense to all of you? When things becomes unmanageable for oneself, then our conclusion in that situation is, I quit. So now I cannot live with this partner anymore. He or she has enough troubled me. Therefore, I'm going and speaking to somebody else. This is what. So when the person is approaching you, please understand at the first place, is not necessarily seeking an advice from you. The person who is coming and sharing a heart with you has already made a decision. You see, Arjuna made a decision. Arjuna has already made a decision, I will not fight. So when such a situation happens, the person has already made a decision, but he wants somebody to hear him or hear her. And at that point of time, if you do not hear the person out properly, any possibility of bringing reconciliation would not happen, because we acted highly immaturely as a mentor, as a leader, as a counselor. So here Arjuna is in that situation frame of mind. Again, taking example of husband wife going through a prolonged troubled married life, finally come and say, Prabhu, this is too much now, we cannot handle. I have decided I'll quit. So the person has come to tell you something. So this is what is Arjuna. Even if you tell something, again the person will say, Prabhu, it's not going to work out, I quit. And you will see, if you keep this theme with you, I'll come back to this point again and show you how Arjuna again says, okay, so I'll go to the forest now. Okay, so I'll go to the forest now. So if you remember this theme which I'm making now in a counselor's conversation, I'll bring this point again and again. You'll see again and again Arjuna says, okay, fine. So should I leave to the forest now? again, it's like कहते हैं ना कुत्ते की पूंछ टेढ़ी है तो टेढ़ी रहती है. It is not that easy. It's not that easy. It's a work. It's a work to be done. And who can be a better guide for us, for that matter, as Krishna here? So that's what happens in 9th verse. Sanjay says, and then the 10th verse, Prabhupada again speaks about the reasons for the different names. That's a homework for all of you to read out. Text number 10. What does Sanjay says next? Tam vacha rishikesha prahassanniva bharata senayorabhayor madhye vishidantam idam vachaha. Something very interesting Sanjay says. Tam vacha Rishikesh. At that point of time, Rishikesh spoke. Rishikesh, master of the senses. Master of the senses means one who understands, one who can perfectly empathize with you. That's what it means, master of the senses, right? Now, again, I'm a little bit putting in a counselor session, guiding. Rishikeshaha, the one who can really understand you. Prahassaniva Bharata. And Sanjay says, at this point of time, Krishna smiled. Not like this. Mild smile, huh? Not that he had a big laughter. Ha 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 ha. Oh, what achhi baat hai tu ki. No, not like that. Just a mild smile. This much. Senayor madhye vishidantam vidam vachaha. And in the middle of the army, seeing Arjuna lamenting like that, Rishikeshaha, the one who is the master of the senses, which means the one who can see. Prabhupada writes, you can only make right decisions. You read out where it is. It's in one of the purports on. Yeah, go to text number 6. I'm just making a point from purport. Text number 6, last purport, last paragraph. The 4th last line. What Prabhupada writes there? Text number 6. Prabhupada says, unless the sciences are controlled, there is no chance of elevation to the platform of knowledge. And without knowledge and devotion, there is no chance of liberation. Now come back to text number 10. Why is Sanjay calling Krishna as Rishikesha? Unless your senses are controlled, you cannot be situated on the platform of knowledge. So Sanjay is telling Dhritarashtra, he is Rishikesha. He is the master of the senses. Not only his, of everyone. He is the master of the senses. And Arjuna has taken his shelter, not your and mine. Apne case mein to yudh hota hi nahi. If we would have happened to be a mentor of Arjuna at that point of time, at max, the battle would have happened on the chariot. The council would have poked a sword in our belly and we would have poked in the council's belly out of frustration. 2 people would have died on the battlefield, counselor and counseling. Nothing else would have happened. So Sanjay is saying here, listen, this is Rishikesha, the master of the senses. He knows exactly how to bring the mind and senses under control. Which in our context, if we say emphatic listening or empathizing with others, he can empathize with. That's what is happening here. So that's the point here. And then now Krishna Vacha begins from text number 11. So now 115, if need to be, we can a little bit pause. Krishna willing, I don't know how much my laptop battery is remaining still. Something is remaining still. Huh? Oh, electricity came. Oh, charge lagao. Fine. So, okay, it looks like some electricity has come here for temporary time being. This is not on. Okay, so we can pause here for a few minutes. And if need to be, if there are any questions now, we can take it, or else we'll give a 5 minutes break and then we'll resume it back after that. Yes, Mother Medhavani. Why the light is not coming?
Thanks, Prabhu. Janatna. Prabhuji, my question is in verse number 7, Arjuna surrenders to Krishna saying, I am your disciple, please instruct me. And in verse 9, he says, I have decided not to fight. So in most situations, it's easy to understand that I am bewildered and to take the shelter of a spiritual master or a counselor. But like as you said, the defending mechanism or giving excuses that goes on even after we accept the shelter of a spiritual master. And most often times I'm talking about a counselor, because that is a person who actually regularly guides us, right? We don't have that much of interaction with the spiritual master. So in this case, we find that Arjuna also is doing that. Even after surrendering to his spiritual master, he is again saying that I'm not going to fight like that. So can we, can we consider that Arjuna, being a pure devotee of the Lord and representing that, can we consider that it is natural for a person to justify, and it is the role of the guru to actually, not give up on the disciple, but continue to hammer the disciple? Or is it the role of the, because as long as the disciple is under the shelter, whether or not he argues, is it not the role of the master? Thank you.
Yes. Hare Krishna. Complete blackout right now. Wait a second. Yes. So we have not yet concluded the discussion between the guru, disciple, or counselor. We have just shared up to certain steps. We'll see that how Krishna responds to Arjuna's situation now. Yes, a guru should not give up, and generally guru never gives up on the disciple. Srila Prabhupada, there are so many beautiful instances. Rishikesh Maharaj, who fell from his position, not Rishikesh Maharaj, who was that? The writer, right? Who knew Vrindavan, a temple president at one point in time. Another one, so who actually did, would write for Prabhupada. Anyways, so one of the Prabhupada disciple, early days Prabhupada disciple, no, not that one. Anyways, fine. So there were several examples like that, but long story short, Prabhupada never gave up. Prabhupada would never give up. And actually, Guru never gave up on the disciple. It's only maybe for time being, just to show his anger, for the purpose of correction for the disciple. Guru may, kind of ignore the disciple. Just I know example of His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj, how he dealt with one of his prospective disciple who wanted to take initiation from His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj. Now, Giriraj Maharaj is a emblem of humility. Now, this particular person was not behaving properly with the devotee community. He was a little arrogant, which Maharaj did not like at all. And when Maharaj noticed this, Maharaj did not speak or speak to him, forget speaking, ignored him entirely for 1 whole year. And this is where Maharaj was also there, and this person is also there. It's not that Maharaj is visiting once in a while. It is something where Maharaj would be often present. And imagine to whom you can directly go and talk. Now you are ignored entirely. So that was just to help him introspect on his situation, because it's not that Maharaj would not have told him before many times. This is something which had been warned again and again, yet the person is not changing. Therefore, this action was taken, ignore. But it's not that the shelter was not there. The moment the person gets, cured from that, understands and, fixes himself, again, Guru will accept. So it's not about giving hope, but it doesn't mean now we exploit our Guru. Our Guru is so compassionate, so we can keep on making the same mistake again and again, saying that, Dekho bhai, you are supposed to be compassionate, you cannot give up on us, so I'll keep repeating the same mistakes. Now, this is not the way it functions out. If that happens, then yes, you may still be under the shelter of Guru, but not the direct shelter then. You will be put under, you will be delegated to some other representatives who will take care, because you're not able to take advantage of Guru's association directly. So there's no point of spending time. And that could be because of familiarity breeds contempt or whatever reason. So in these scenarios, then you are delegated to somebody else to be taken care of. And so your name would be given to somebody else, and the other person is said, okay, well, you take care of the person, because what's the use? Once, twice, thrice, four times, 5 times have been told, but the person makes a mistake, which means the person doesn't have respect. If you have a respect, you cannot repeat or you cannot violate what has been told. There's only lack of respect and gratitude where we do the same thing what we are told not to do. That's simple. It's simple. There's no complicated. We cannot just every day say, sorry, I made a mistake. What do you mean by mistake? You have been told once, twice. And if it is 3rd time or 4th time, then there's no point actually. Such a person will go on committing more offenses actually. So I've been making this point lately. I'll make this point in this forum also. There is an external theism, the Veshbhusha, Tilak, Kantimala, Dhoti Kurta, where we become, we look like God conscious people. And there is also internal theism, which you can call it as a psychological theism. Most devotees, sadhakas, I mean, I'm saying at the neophyte stage, I'm not making a point to anyone in general, but what happens is externally they become God conscious, which means they adapt frequent changes to look like sadhaka. But internally, psychologically, we continue to remain atheist. Psychologically, we continue to remain atheist. No proper respects for Vaishnavas or the sadhu, no attentive chanting, no careful reading or hearing of scriptures. Coming together, reading, hearing is something else. But what do you do in a private space? So it's a two different reality that we live in actually. So it may be like eat, pray, dance together, Hari Bol. It's not that way. The major change, the major theism that has to happen is on our psychological level. And if it happens at the psychological level, then our personality would match with how we behave externally. So what happens generally, you will find people acting like a split personality. What is split personality? Oh, Prabhuji, you're so good. Mataji, you're so good. We are devotees of the Lord. Haribol, Haribol. They do like this. Yet they act like an atheist. What do you mean by atheist? Disobedient. Totally disobedient. What has been told, completely, overseen, not paying attention to it. That's where the reality lies. So we can fool anyone and everyone. But please understand, never think our mistakes have been overseen or not noticed by our seniors or mentors. If you think you can fool around, then you already consider your senior to be a fool. So we should never have this thing. Yes, maybe we have not been reprimanded or corrected just because the person thinks you're not ready to hear about it or spoken about it. But it does not mean that you have become so smart that you can fool around. It never happens. It can never happen because it violates the basic sanctity and principle of the relationship. It is not a subject matter of mundane relationship, about your school teacher and etc. No, it doesn't work like that. There is no question of somebody being a teacher if the teacher doesn't know what's going on with you. It will not work like that. So at least that one person you cannot fool. And if you think you can fool that person, then there is no relationship remaining anyways. Fine? Therefore, humility. Humility, one definition as we discussed today, complete dependence. So anyways, these are some thoughts on that question. Yes, Mother Rati Manjari, what's your question here? Unmute. Then what?
Prabhuji, in this the Bhagavad Gita 2.2, in which the three aspects of the absolute truth is described. Here in this purport, Srila Prabhupada says sunshine, sun surface, and sun planet. And Srimad Bhagavatam, it says sunshine, sun globe, and sun god.
Okay.
They're the same, Prabhuji, the sun surface and sun globe, and sun god and sun planet.
What's your question? Say that again.
Prabhuji, in Bhagavad Gita, it is said the three aspects are sunshine,
Correct.
sun's surface, and sun planet.
Correct.
In Srimad Bhagavatam, the same thing is said as sunshine, sun globe, and sun god.
Oh, this is analogy. Okay. Analogy is supposed to give you an indication to help you understand. You cannot dissect an analogy, and it's not something. Analogy can change. Analogy is a relatable example which is given to you to help you understand a concept which is beyond your comprehension. So now you cannot debate on analogy. If analogy is being said like this, does it have to be like that exactly in this other place? No, not necessarily. So it can change. As long as the concept becomes comprehensible, it works.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
It is going on and off. Fine. Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes, Madanjana?
Hello. Prabhuji, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm just getting distracted with the, electricity is fluctuating back and forth. Keep it on so I'll know what's going on. Yes, go ahead, Mother.
Prabhuji, in text 5, it is mentioned that Bhishma and Drona were obliged to take the side of Duryodhana because of his financial assistance. For Dronacharya, it's okay, but you have taught us about Bhishma Pitama. like he had taken a vow just to preserve that kingdom, or just that it should be safe. Hastinapur should be safe.
Correct, correct.
So what is the
So there is an obligation because Bhishma Pitama is being taken care by the king. Bhishma Pitama was not the king. So he was being taken care by the king. So that way, what it means, at that point of time, the sense of responsibility and dedication to one's master was so much that people were willing to give their life, particularly Kshatriyas. So Bhishma Pitama, who's maintaining Bhishma Pitama? The king of the state, who happened to be Dhritarashtra at that point of time. Prior to that, somebody else. And Bhishma Pitama was most qualified to be a king, but because of the commitment and the vows that he had taken, he could not be. Therefore, he always became dependent on the king. And that context, it's a point which is a kind of a generic statement which is made.
Yes, yes, Prabhu. Yes.
That's the way it's spoken about, all right? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, okay, so almost 1:30. My laptop battery may function for another half an hour or something. I guess, should we give a break for 5 minutes? What do we do about it? I guess giving a break is okay. So that a little bit move around and you have more attention and come back after that. Hare Krishna. Kya hua? Did everyone heard it? Okay, so let's go for 5 minutes break. I don't know, 5 minutes break, I'm right. 5 minutes break. We'll try to see our internet can improve then. Okay, so 5 minutes break is 1:30. We'll come back at 1:35. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. It won't work for me. Kindly excuse us for all the technical issues that we are facing today because of no electric current at my end. But let's continue with our discussion right now. Okay, so let's a little bit take a look from the presentation of what we have discussed and some important lessons here. 1 second. Presentation, screen. Okay, so I hope screen is visible to everyone. So this was the point which was discussed before. Some lessons from what we have discussed so far, kind of revisiting it in case if you have missed it. So lesson from second verse and the third verse, where Krishna speaks to Arjuna and Krishna chastises Arjuna. Krishna calls his compassion as Krashmalam. So the point which is made here is the finer sentiments like compassion, although they are noble, but are worthless if applied in an ignorant ways. That's a point here. Then in verse number 4 onwards, 4 to 6, where Arjuna speaks, Arjuna's condition is due to his selfishness, which led him to frustration and indecisiveness. And the major point here is material attachments leads to perplexity. He's attached to his ideas and he thinks he knows what is best. and because of which bewilderment, frustration, etc., etc. And this is not only an example of Arjuna that we see in the history. We see example of Dhritarashtra towards Duryodhan. Because he was attached to Duryodhan, he could never make the right decision. Similarly, we see Uttanapad, 4th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, because he was attached to Suruchi, therefore Dhruv felt insulted or was allowed to be insulted, and Dhruv left, and Uttanapad could not stop Dhruv. Similarly, we see is in the 9th canto, the discussion of Lord Ram comes in Srimad Bhagavatam, where we have episode of Kekai. So Dashrath was being attached to Kekai, or not Dashrath attached to Kekai, but Kekai material attachment to Bharat led to that situation, because she became so insecure, thinking that the right of Bharat would be taken away, and therefore she asked for it. Similarly, we see Kamsa. Kamsa was attached to no one else but to his own body. Because that material attachment, he lifted the sword, and he wanted to kill his own sister Devaki, for whom some time ago he was shedding tears. Similarly, Arjuna, because of his material attachment to his relatives, has become perplexed. And the list goes on. Parents, being material attached to their kids, are confused about raising. How do we raise them? The mother has one idea, the father has another idea, and things goes like this. So we need all of us need to reflect it for a while. Why we face bewilderment or confusion? It generally arises because of our material attachments. And then Arjuna says, please guide me. So what does this, his surrender here, the sudden change of heart teaches us? Let's take a look at it. So we already read the shloka, but Arjuna inherently, I'll again repeat, inherently he was humble, because it takes a lot of courage and humility to accept failure and one's own weakness. How many of you agree it is easy to admit one's weakness or mistake? Those of you say it's easy, give me a thumbs up. Those of you say it's very difficult, give me a thumbs down. Yes or no? It's not easy. But Arjuna agreed. So inherently he was humble. Therefore, I had raised this question to all of you at that point of time. How come Arjuna within 6 to 7 was suddenly made such a shift? Because he was humble, therefore he was able to accept his failure and acknowledge his weakness. Why we fail to do so? Because we have something larger than us within us, and that is called as ego. That does not allow us to surrender. But unless we accept it, our mistakes, our weaknesses, we cannot overcome it. Unless we overcome it, we cannot succeed in our life. Therefore, it is said, success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. Arjuna was humble, and this humility gave him strength to acknowledge and take responsibility of his weaknesses. And therefore, the first lesson from Arjuna surrendering to Krishna, unless we acknowledge our own deficiencies, until then we cannot accept any guidance or cannot rise our weakness. Simple example, would you go to a doctor unless you are sure you are sick? Unless you acknowledge you are sick, you will not go to a doctor. Similarly, how would you accept a guidance unless you are sure you are wrong, you are mistaken? You need to be guided, you need to be given a right direction. Therefore, it is said, failure is a stepping stone to a success, but only for those who recognize and are eager to learn from their mistakes. That's where the failure becomes a stepping stone to success. Lesson number 2, to be progressive in life, it is essential to cultivate humility. Why? Because it protects us from being falsely proud of our accomplishments and strengths, which otherwise can prove futile in another situation environment. Perfect example is Arjuna. What accomplishments he had, what strength he had. Look, none of his material skills and accomplishment could save him at this point of time, and he's bewildered. So it's very important to cultivate humility. We have a choice, either to become Arjuna or Duryodhan. Duryodhan had a skill and accomplishment, no doubt about it, and he was so puffed up and proud about it that he thought that he could arrest Krishna, and he attempted for that, and therefore he died at the end of battlefield. Lesson number 3, the fundamental step in spirituality is to accept a guru who comes in an authentic lineage of spiritual teachers and who has mastered the spiritual art. We learn the first fundamental step in spirituality is to approach a bona fide guru. One may argue the Lord resides in the heart of everyone. Thus, I don't need a guru, but to access him, we require help to reawaken our inner pure consciousness. Therefore, Krishna says we need to accept a guru. And those who do not accept a guru, as the saying goes, one who accepts himself as a guru accepts a fool for a disciple. So Lord Shri Krishna responded to the appeal for shelter, and he started to impart the first spiritual instruction. So the key lessons in this whole first section, if you want to summarize, verse number 1 to 10 is Arjuna was perplexed yet eager for enlightenment. Very important. Problem with us is we are always perplexed, but never look for solution. And we continue in that perplexity. Second, humility is the key to understand the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita. And the third, one will take shelter of the bona fide guru only when one realizes that there is no shelter in the material world, including one's own mind and intelligence, and he cannot independently solve it. But to be able to take shelter of a guru, faith matters. And not a weak faith. A very, very strong faith matters. I would like to narrate a story of a lame boy who attempted to learn martial arts. What happened with him? Hare Krishna, are you all there? Just making sure because my internet is weak. I felt like I'm speaking to myself on the computer. Okay, I see some of you there. So very interesting story is considered to be a true story from Japan, where there was a lame boy who was tortured, troubled by his friends because of his physical weakness. He was joked, mocked all about, and therefore he thought, I should defend myself. And to defend myself, I should know the martial arts. So mother, once he was beaten up badly, so then mother thought, well, he need to defend himself, otherwise who will take care of him? So mother found out one of the best martial art teacher, and she took her son to that martial art teacher. And the martial art teacher, whose name was Sensei, he began to teach this boy. He taught him for 1 complete year. However, he only taught him 1 single move. How many moves? 1 single move was taught to this boy for the 1 complete year. And finally, after that, at the end of the training, there was this championship. A district level championship was organized, and where the martial art teacher, Mr. Sensei, he suggested for the boy to take part in the competition. You have been taught only a single move, and you are supposed to take part in a martial art competition. That is too much to ask for. The boy had a faith. He went to the championship, and he happened to come across in his very first match. You have those quarterfinals, semifinals. His very first match, his match was against the previous year champion, a district level champion, a kung fu champion, not kung fu, the martial art champion. And now, if imagine, just like, how many of you used to play cricket? Raise your hands. It's India's favorite sport. I believe everyone would have played cricket. So imagine at our level of batsmanship, if the bowler is Shoaib Akhtar, and it is not a Costco ball, it's a leather ball, hard ball, how many of you feel a little frightened to play the cricket today? Yes or no? There will be a threat to the life. Now, this is not a cricket match. This is the martial art, which is meant to break your bones. So imagine the boy getting into the ring for the martial art match. Okay, looks like the light is there. Give me a quick second. Let's move to the better internet. 1 quick second. The network is changing. Hare Krishna. So what was I saying? So the boy goes into the ring, and in the first round, the boy gets beaten up badly. And it was a whole body with bruises and the blood oozing out, with broken limbs here and there. He comes, and the mother is frightened what to do. And the teacher, the disciple is looking at the teacher, and the teacher says, go back again. How many of you say you will go back again? Marwa ke rahega ye to? Are you a teacher or my enemy? So he said, no, go back again. And the teacher said, now is the time for you to use the move that I taught you. The moment you get a chance, use that move that I taught you, which you practiced for the last 1 year. The boy agreed and he went. And the moment he played that move, the opponent fell on the ground and he was defeated. Just with a single move, with a single hit. And the boy and mother, everyone was shocked. What happened? And when he won the match, he came out of the ring. The mother and the son came to the teacher, asked, what happened? How did you won the match with a single move? And the teacher said, well, for every martial art or even for the kung fu, for any physical assault practice, there is always an offense and there is a defense. So for every strike, there is a particular defense. For the opponent to defend himself, for this move that your son played, he had to catch hold of his left hand. Because your son did not have a left hand. That was his disability. He did not have a left hand. So when he tried catching a left hand, he couldn't catch a left hand. And the single strike of this shot, which he had been practicing for last 1 year, therefore he was able to bring the last year champion on the ground with a single shot. So an interesting story. And what it teaches, let's take a look at it with the screen sharing. Our teacher knows our strengths and weaknesses. As I said, faith matters. He knows how to convert our weakness into strength. So he knows a lot of things about us, but we need one thing, to have faith and be submissive. What is required from the disciples end? Need to have faith and be submissive. And then with this spirit, if we surrender, there are 3 effects of surrender that happens. The first effect of surrender is enlightenment. Arjuna felt enlightened. His lamentation went away. Second, freedom from false lamentation. The outcome of enlightenment is removal of ignorance. So freedom from lamentation, his bewilderment was gone. And third, reinstatement in his own duty. That is, at the end of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna said, yes, I will do, my dear Lord, whatever you say. Arjuna would surely fight. Because Arjuna surrendered to the Lord, and that's what the 3 things happen. Enlightenment, Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnanam Jnana Shalakaya. Freedom from false lamentation, Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha. And reinstatement in his own duty, that is, Arjuna would surely fight. That's what it all happened. And now with that, we come to the next section from verse number 11 to 30, identity. So what happens? Now what did Krishna, how did Krishna respond is what we're going to focus now. Chapter number 2, text number 11. So counselor-counsel relationship. Counselor did emphatic listening, step number 1. Counselee expressed himself, both step number 1. Then step number 2, when counselee kept quiet, the counselor kind of reprimanded or kind of gave him a direction again how he or she should behave. And when that was given, the step number 2, the counselee went into justification mode. And finally, when counselee was exhausted from justification mode in case of Arjuna, because he was humble, he was able to submit himself, saying that Shishasyam Sadhiman Tvam Prapannam. He surrendered. Yet, despite saying I surrender, but he was still caught on his viewpoint. I will not fight. But now he has given the reign of his life in the hands of his guru. So what will guru do now? Or what should guru do now? Should he continue to hear the disciple? Should he pamper the disciple? How did Krishna respond? Text number 11. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Asochvananvasocastvam Pragnavadam Chabhasase Gatasun Agatasum Cha Nanusochanti Panditaha. What Krishna is using at the end of the whole conversation, we use this whip at the beginning of the conversation. Why our conversation, why our mentoring, or why we fail to be a good guide for others? Because the whip which Arjuna is using now, Krishna is using now, Krishna is saying, you are a fool. What Krishna says? Asochvan, anvasochastam, which is not worthy of lamentation, lamenting. Pragyavadams, you are speaking intelligent words. Chabhasase, you're speaking. Pragyavada means learned talks. Gatasun agatasun nanu sochanti pandita. In other words, Krishna says, what is not worthy of grief, you're grieving at it. Those who are wise do not lament for the living nor for the dead. And Prabhupada says in the very first line of the purport, the Lord at once took the position of the teacher and chastised the student, calling him a fool. You fool, you speak like a learned sage, learned man, but you don't know anything. Which is supposed to happen a little later on, chastisement. Unfortunately, we give it in the very beginning. And that's where this whole communication gap happens. You're talking like a learned man, but you do not know who is learned. One who knows what is body, what is soul, does not lament. And like that, Prabhupada discusses here. Now, our discussion now would be the importance of chastisement in spiritual life. Okay? So you might bear with me for this. And I'm just going to speak entirely from Prabhupada, what Prabhupada says on this subject matter. So please don't get upset with me if I speak on a sensitive topic. The need for chastisement in Kali Yuga. Well, in Dwapar Yuga, there was a need for to speak in Kali Yuga. So I'm going to speak what Prabhupada spoke. In his lecture, spoken on this verse, text number 11, I'm giving you a reference. Prabhupada gave a lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam in Tokyo in 1972. And while giving a lecture, Srimad Bhagavatam lecture, 1972 Tokyo, he quoted text 11. And Prabhupada speaks as follows. I'm just reading it as it is, okay? Not my words. Verbatim, I'm repeating Prabhupada. What he says is something very interesting. He says, Krishna was accepted as a spiritual master. A spiritual master has the right to chastise his disciple. A father, a spiritual master, are advised to chastise. And who advises? Chanakya Pandit. Puttaram cha, shishyam cha, tadayan, na tu lalayat. You got the point? Tadayan, na tu lalayat. No lalayat, okay? No lalayat. A father and teacher advised by Chanakya Pandit. You should always chastise your son and disciple. Prabhupada says, Tadayat means simply chastise. Always find some mistakes. Do not be angry with your... So Prabhupada says, do not be angry with your guru and father. What to do? It is their business. Being a teacher and father means to simply find out the mistakes of disciple and not to find out any good things. 1972 Tokyo Srimad Bhagavatam lecture, okay? Now Prabhupada says further, Tadyan natu lalyat. Lalyat means petting. Oh, my dear son, my dear boy, you're so nice. Sometimes it is done, but it is the business of the teacher and father to chastise. Same lecture, huh? I don't know what happened in the background of this where Prabhupada is quoting and saying chastise, chastise. Probably Prabhupada would have chastised somebody before. Something would have happened. Never acknowledge that a disciple's business or a son's business is very good. Never acknowledge. Why? They will be spoiled. That is the injunction of Chanakya Muni. Lalane bahavo dosha. If you simply pat them, then there will be so many faults. Dosha means faults. Tadane bahavo guna. Tadane means when you chastise, they will become very much qualified. Tasmat, therefore, Puttram cha, shishyam cha, tadyan natu lalyat. Simply chastise, do not pat. This is the moral injunction. And now Prabhupada gives, after quoting Chanakya Pandit, his own personal example and experience. So far, we are concerned when our spiritual master used to chastise us, we used to take it as a blessing. That was very nice. And he would chastise us like anything. You damn rascal! You foolish stupid! Anything. All good word. All good words our spiritual master would use. I'm just reading out what Prabhupada said, okay? This is Prabhupada's lecture transcription that I'm referring right now. And then Prabhupada gives an example. One day it so happened, it was not my fault. Srila Prabhupada Bhakti Siddhanta Surya Thakur was speaking, and I was very much fond of hearing him. My old god brother, who was a retired doctor, he wanted to speak something to me. So he ideally should not have come between the class and spoken to me, but God knows what happened, that he came to me and he attracted my attention. And when Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur saw that another disciple, who's a very senior man, is disturbing the attention of another disciple who's trying to hear attentively, he became very angry. Prabhupada says, he chastised him like anything. What Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, it's very nice to read and hear about the nice Sushru story, right? This is the other side of the Guru. He became so angry, and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, do you think that because you pay 60 rupees, you have purchased us so that you can do anything? Prabhupada said, he said like that. He used very strong words. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, do you think that I am speaking for others? You think you have learned everything, so you're diverting your attention? And Prabhupada continues. In so many ways, he was very, very angry. You see? So it is nice to chastise. Anyways, so that's what Krishna did. Good for you. Nobody would chastise you today. Everyone have burnt their heads by chastising their subordinates, because Kali Yuga have really, really made an advancement. People would walk away if you chastise. Nobody sees today as a blessing. So that's about text number 11, and we'll take text number 12, and we'll conclude with that. Text number 12 is very, very important verse actually. All right, let's go to text number 12. Na tu vevaham jatu nasam, na tvam neme janadipah, na chaivana bhavishyama, sarve vayam matha param. Krishna says, Natu evaham jatunasham, I did not exist. Never there was a time when I did not exist. Natvam, nor you. Neme janadi, nor all these assembled kings. Na chaivana bhavisha, nor there would be any time in the future when all of us would not exist. Sarve vayam matha param. Never was there a time when I, you, or all these kings did not exist. Nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. A very, very important shloka. Please write down the title. This shloka establishes the soul's individuality. This is the shloka which debunks Mayavad philosophy or Mayavad theory. So, rest of, I'll take another 5 minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes, and I'll focus from Srila Prabhupada's writings and lectures some points how we can debunk Mayavad philosophy. So, very first point, soul is individual. However, unfortunately, Mayavadi says, what is Mayavad? What is Mayavad and what is our Vaishnava philosophy? Hare Krishna. Okay, no problem. Switch back on that. Yeah. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, Guranga. Whenever I connect a laptop, it goes away. Fine. What was I making a point? What is Vaishnavism understanding and what is Mayavadi? What does Mayavadi talk about? According to Mayavadis, we are performing Leela. According to Mayavadis, Bhaumya Leela. All of us, we all are Narayana. We all are Narayan and we are performing Bhaumya Leela, where we have temporarily taken on to matter and temporarily we have forgotten our true identity, that we are Brahman. Brahman would be used again and again in Bhagavad Gita. What does Brahman means? Of course, there are two concepts, Brahman and Para-Brahman, but let's talk about Brahman right now. Brahman means the supreme consciousness. So, Atma is also called as consciousness, which should be discussed in the follow verses. So, there are many modern day religions who do not believe in a personal form of the Lord, right? Mostly all Abrahamic religions, they do not believe in that. And the reason is simple. According to them, the whole background is, again, it's the hodgepodge of Mayavadi, only that there is no form, and the living entity, which is Narayan, has temporarily come into this world, which does not exist. Jagan Mithya, this is false. And then once we finish our Leela of forgetfulness, we realize we are the same Narayan. And when we quit our body, the definition of mukti according to them is we merge back. To give you a gross example to help you understand this, is like right now in Pune, there's a rainy season right now. I can see, our Wi-Fi didn't got on? Huh? Fine, leave it. There's a rainy season right now. Let me give you an example from this context. Imagine a rain cloud. So according to Mayavadis, we all were part of the rain cloud. At one point in time, the rain cloud showered water on the earth. And that same, the water that comes on the earth merges into the river water, and the river water goes back into the ocean. And from the same ocean, that same water goes back to the cloud. Like, this is their whole philosophy. So our individuality, existence does not exist. However, Krishna says, very first point, Krishna says, I was existing, you were existing in the past, and future also will exist. If that's the case, we are something beyond this whole conception of Brahman realization. So Prabhupada gives many arguments for it, how to repeat. So this is briefly what Mayavadi means about that, this thing. So let's take a look of some of the points. I'll share the notes. Where is that note? 1 second. This is based on Prabhupada's lectures, actually, which I compiled. And where is it? Yeah. And let me share it. Share the screen. Are you all able to see the document? I will send this document also. This is compiled from Srila Prabhupada's notes, and I'll just tell you quickly what's happening here. So I have kind of organized Prabhupada's. This is one Prabhupada class which he gave on verses 8 to 12. It's a long 1.5 hour class, one of the rare classes of Prabhupada which is long. And there Prabhupada makes some points during the course of discussion. So I have just put it down into different claims like that. So Hare Krishna. One quick second. Okay. So debunking Mayavad theory. Claim number 1. The Mayavadi says we all are impersonal. There is no individuality. However, Prabhupada writes, the Mayavad theory is something to do with this. You connect the charger. Sorry, my laptop is about to get discharged now. But as soon as I connect my laptop, the light goes off. There's something in that. Fine, I'll just work with how much ever I can do. The Mayavad theory is that the ultimate spirit is impersonal. Then how Krishna can say that never there was a time when you and all these persons never existed? That means I existed as individual, you existed as individual, and all these persons who are therefore before us also existed. So Prabhupada says, no. Now, apart from statement of authority, you have to apply your reason also and arguments. Can you say anywhere there is agreement between two parties? Prabhupada is emphasizing on the concept of individuality. What does individuality do? Individuality gives diversity, which means having a different opinions. And Prabhupada gives an example. Have you ever found, if we say we all are one, then why there's a difference of opinion? And that's the point Prabhupada is making. Can you say anywhere there is an agreement between two parties? No. You go and study. Either in the state, in the family, in the community, in the nation, there is no agreement. And then Prabhupada gives an example of American political state of affair that time about president's election. That's of claim number 1. Individuality means difference of opinions, and we always have that. Within a family also never happens that you have same opinion. Claim number 1. Claim number 2. Mayavadi says that this individuality is Maya. So Mayavadis have a concept called as Ghatakash, Potakash. What is Ghatakash? Ghatakash is this whole vast unlimited sky. What is Potakash? Potakash means you have a pot, Ghada, Pota is Ghada, you have a pot, and you close the lid. And then within that pot, what is there? Akash. But it's a small Akash, small sky. So the Mayavadi says, when you break the potakash, when you break the pot, then the small Akash becomes one with the bigger Akash. Getting the point? So they say similarly, body is like this pot, Brahman outside, Brahman inside. And when the body is destroyed, the pot is destroyed, then this Brahman becomes one with that Brahman. So how many of you think this is correct analogy? This is right. How many of you are convinced we are, Mayavadi is the right philosophy? How many of you like this example? Potakash becoming Ghatakash or Gotakash, right? But Prabhupada, Gota, Gata, whatever it is. Prabhupada counter argues. Now Prabhupada says, now within the picture, can I have somebody to read out? Any volunteers to read out the section that you see highlighted? Who all we have here? Ramesh and Swapna. Please go ahead and mute yourself.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
It can be a little louder. Yes, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Can you hear me?
Good. Yes, good. Please read it.
Now within the big picture, there is also sky, a small sky. Now, as soon as the picture is broken, the outside, the bigger sky, and the small sky within the picture mixes. That is Mayavadi theory. But this analogy cannot be applied. Analogy means points of similarity. That is the law of analogy. The sky cannot be compared. The small sky within the picture cannot be compared with the living entity. It is the material matter. Sky is matter, and individual living entity is spirit. So how you can say, just like a small ant, it is spirit soul. It has got its individuality. But a big dead stone, hill or mountain, it has no individuality.
So you got the point. So point Prabhupada is making, if you have to draw an analogy, there has to be certain similarity. Akash at the end of the day is a matter. Akash is not Jiva. So you're saying, Hare Krishna. So you're talking about Pota Akash. So you're comparing Pota, the pot, with the body makes sense because that's also matter. But Akash, which means you're comparing the soul with another matter, which is spirit, cannot be compared with matter. So therefore, this analogy is totally false. And again, Prabhupada emphasizes on the individual. Claim number 3. So claim number 2 kind of counter argues against the philosophy of Ghatakash and Potakash. Claim number 3. Now Prabhupada says there are many evidences from Bhagavad Gita where it is said the spirit cannot be fragmented. We'll see that in 2nd chapter, verse number 24, 25, 26, where Krishna says the soul cannot be cut. Now this is something very interesting. The soul cannot be cut into pieces. Then how come all of us have existed? We are existing separately, yes or no? Now their thought process was so phenomenal, they say everything is false. Your existence is false. Everything is false. Prabhupada will talk about it. Prabhupada says somewhere here also, they say, just like Prabhupada gives an example, when a man and woman comes together, unite together, the child's birth takes place. Is that false? Is it happening? Yet Mayavadi says this is false. No, that's not our understanding. Our understanding is it's temporary. It's not eternal, but it is not false. So Bhagavad Gita says, it's a 2nd chapter ahead, we'll see the soul cannot be cut into pieces. If Brahman cannot be cut into pieces, then how come so many individual Brahmans, isolated Brahmans are existing today? Again, it proves that we all have individuality. That is claim number 3. Claim number 4, the father of all, the Mayavada theory, Shankaracharya. What did Shankaracharya said? Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam Amuna Mate. Somebody please read out the highlighted portion which I have on the screen for all of you. Our admins can manage who we have. Okay, Prashant Jalgi Prabhu. Go ahead, unmute yourself. Yes. From here.
Oh, you are dependent on grammar to understand. This all nonsense, Bhaja Govindam, just worship Govinda. Bhaja Govindam Bhaja. 3 times he says, just worship Govinda. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. As soon as one thing is 3 times stressed, that means final. So Shankaracharya says, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Mudha Mate. Mudha. Mudha, I have several times explained. Mudha means rascal, as you are depending on your grammatical understanding.
Dukra Karane, which means grammatical understanding. And Prabhupada says, Krishna says, Tyaktva. Beautiful point Prabhupada makes. So many times Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Tadhama Paramambhava. Tyaktodeham punarjanma naiti mameti sukantaya. Which means Krishna is saying, if you come to my abode, you will never come back to this world. So Prabhupada says, let's say a king invites you to his house. Please come to my, visit me. Does it mean he has a place or no? So when Krishna says, when you come to my abode, you never take a birth again, which means Krishna has an abode. Krishna must be living there. So that's the point Prabhupada makes here. And then Prabhupada goes Brahma Samhita, explaining that how Brahma Samhita explains about the nature of Vrindavan, like that. And claim number 5, finally, Prabhupada says, accept Vedic authority. Vedic authority says over here. And Prabhupada gives an example, just like cow dung and urine is pure. However, the dog's dung and not the dog's dung, the dog's stool and the urine is not pure, how much ever the Westerners may debate for it. The other people may debate and argue. Even the humus excreta is not pure. So how do we understand and reconcile it? Accept Vedic authority, because Vedic authority says so. That's the point. So our acharyas explain, Krishna himself says the soul cannot be divided, our individuality exists. So these are the 5 claims that Prabhupada makes. I will share with all of you. This is, I feel, is a very important. You'll find it. This is something as a preaching application. Somebody debates with you on this, on Mayavadi concepts, you can share. The first is individuality. Second is Ghatakash, Potakash. The analogy, this is false. And third is evidences from Bhagavad Gita. The soul cannot be cut into pieces. That's section number 3. Claim 3. Claim number 4, Shankaracharya himself says, Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam. And when Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Yad Gatvana Nivartante Tadhama Paramamama, which means Krishna has his abode. So how can we say is all Brahman? And finally, the 5th claim, we have to learn to accept the Vedic authority. What does Bhagavad Gita says and what does Acharya says? Like that, we can deal with this Mayavadi transgression or misunderstanding. So with that, we'll pause here for today. We have concluded our discussion up to 2nd chapter, verse number 12. Just to do a quick recap, we saw how Arjuna became bewildered. And then finally, he kind of acknowledges weakness and he agreed to take shelter of Lord Shri Krishna. Lord Shri Krishna, the very first thing Lord Shri Krishna said, he called him a fool. You think you are a great learned person, but you don't know how to solve the life's problem. And then we discussed on the subject matter of importance of chastisement, why Guru should chastise and how a disciple should see a chastisement. It should be seen as a blessing. And Prabhupada gave an example of his own spiritual master chastising like that. And then we saw the last verse, 12th verse, where was Krishna says, we all are individual souls, which defeats the Mayavadi conception of life. And something very important. And prior to that, we had discussed many lessons which I already revisited. So I'm not just recollecting them right now. So with that, we come to a conclusion for today's discussion. And one of the highlights for today's discussion was seeing the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna in the context of a counselor and a counseling, in the context of a mentor and a mentee, in terms of how we can seek guidance and how we can offer guidance. Next ahead, we'll see Krishna begins to give his first spiritual instruction, you're not the body but spirit soul, from text number 12, text number 13 to text number 30. And then we'll see the rest of the discussion as we move forward. With that, thank you all for your kind attention and bearing with all the temporary inconveniences that we had today. I, for a second, thought we might not have a session, but somehow we still managed to have our full session today. So thank you all for your kind attention. In case any questions or any comments, we can open the forum for that. Hare Krishna. Yes, Sari Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, I had a question regarding while reading Shastras Bhagavatam. There comes a query like, what is that how devotee is reacting according to his free will, or there is God's will acting on him? How can
God's will is not acting on any one of us. God's energy is acting on us. That is Maya Shakti. Okay, Krishna is busy playing flute. He doesn't have, he is not under some lockdown or isolation that he needs to, get involved in our life. So, in our situation, we are bound by our own karma. Karmana deva naitrena jantu dehe upatyaye. Like that, that's how our birth happens under the supervision of Daiva. The Daiva, of course, Daiva ultimately is Krishna, but there are energies of Krishna which are functioning, just like a prime minister of the country. He is not managing your traffic situation in your society. His energies are managing it like that. So that's how it functions. Now, what happens when you are reading scriptures, when you're reading about the lives of the pure devotees? There we see how Krishna's will dominates. So there is one aspect of that where Krishna will dominating, just like, for example, you can say Krishna will dominates, or you can say other way around, where you learn a very important lesson from those personalities, how they see that this is will of the Lord. And they change the whole curse into a blessing. Parishit Maharaj changing this whole curse given to him as a blessing, while Kamsa failed. Kamsa was also given a curse in one sense. 8th son of Devaki would kill you. If he would have seen that this is what the will of the Lord, maybe I will become an instrument of Kamsa Puran. Some new instructions will manifest. Then he would be glorified today. So in that case also you can say that was the will of the Lord. When the demigods came and made an announcement. So most important thing is, how do you accept the will of the Lord? And how do we understand and accept the will of the Lord? You can refer to 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Nimitta matram bhavisavesachin, that shloka, the shlok, that one, and the next shloka, purport, action, the purport. To understand the will of the Lord means to understand the will of the Guru. To follow the instructions of the Guru means to follow the instructions of the Lord Shri Krishna. That's how it reconciles for us. All right? Hare Krishna. So, okay, I guess there are no questions from anyone now. So we'll pause here for today. And it's being a Rath Yatra weekend, so I do understand many of you might have different services. So thank you all once again for joining in for today's discussion. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Hare Krishna.